talks about attachment to this life. And he's one of the most important lamas in the Vajrayogini tradition. And he says it's, what does he say? He describes attachment to this life as attachment to one's practice of the ethical life, into one's learning, into one's contemplation, into one's meditation. So, what in the world is he talking about, right? I mean, how is it wrong to be attached to an ethical life, right? So, we have a very particular set of ethics based upon our culture and various other circumstances. So what he's talking about is don't let your ethics be run by anything except Buddhist logic, which eliminates a lot of other things. For example, our instincts and our reflexes. We have certain behaviors and habits that we engage in instinctively without thinking about them, right? Like if I'm an ethical person and it's just a habit, that's nice, but it isn't going to cut it, right? So, it may be the case that I don't lie, I don't enjoy lying, or I don't enjoy stealing, or many other things, right? But that's because me of the past lives worked very hard to create these habits, right? So, what Salim Lee would call Joe, Joe is the former me in my past life, or Jane, I can thank Joe or Jane for, being an ethical person in this life, right? It wasn't me, it was the former me, who made me an ethical person right now. And so, I consider myself a good person, but that's because of the effort of the past life me, right? So, and it's very easy to lose that. I mean, being put in a tight spot or a difficult situation, it's very easy for one's ethics to go out the window, right? All you have to do is look around the world and see people who have deprivation or difficult circumstances, and it's very easy to behave negatively towards other people, right? So, we think, well, I live in a civilized culture, I live in a civilized society, I would never, take food from someone else so that I can have it, and, but then when you're hungry or your children are hungry and you don't have any other option, you do it, right? I mean, it's we have these instincts, but they're very fragile and we can lose them. And we're born into this life with these instincts because our past life, we did a hell of a lot of work. We're not just moral because we're moral. It's just not a natural thing that I'm moral. I'm moral now because of past conditioning. And it can be lost. It's not fixed. It's not static. It's not guaranteed, right? So whatever instinct we have to be a good person was built carefully over lifetimes. And don't think that they can't change and that they can be lost, right? Being around bad influences, difficult circumstances. You need something really badly, and that it melts away. Ethical behavior melts away, self-control melts away, right? So they're beautiful. Having those instincts, having ethical instincts is beautiful and wonderful, and we have to continue to cultivate them, and we have to try to keep them and grow them, like a flower or a plant, right? They're not just there by themselves. They take effort to reinforce and to continue and to strengthen, right? So the second thing he says is according to what feels good. You can't live you can't be attached to ethics and consider something ethical because it feels good, right? There are plenty of things which might feel good, which aren't necessarily the right ethical thing to do. There are plenty of things which feel good, which aren't the right ethical things to do, right? So, like go off of the.
It's like your own personal joke.
Yeah, right. I was sort of reading Chris's mind back there. You can see the expressions on his face back there. So, and even as an ethical practitioner, as you become a more advanced practitioner, you can't be lazy. You shouldn't be lazy. You got to move up to higher and higher virtues, right? Like it's great that I'm ethical. However, I should be pursuing higher ethics and higher sets of vows, more refined ethics, right? So, we start with avoiding the 10 non-virtues, and we go to bodhisattva vows, which are more refined and more comprehensive ways of being ethical. And you go to, ordination or tantric vows is more refined and advanced ways of being ethical, right? So the idea is to be using logic and pursuing the highest possible ethics and the highest possible virtue, and not just the ones that we're comfortable with, or that are convenient, or that feel good, or that are easy, right? So it's like that, and then often you run into a moral dilemma, right? It's like, should I do that or shouldn't I do that? And it's hard. Like, if I do what I believe to be ethical and right, people are going to criticize me, and they might think I'm crazy. They might think I'm stupid. That might be shunned socially, right? So that's hard. Oftentimes the right decision is the ethically correct decision is unpopular. With people around us, like everybody at work is lying to promote the business, and you're like, no, I'm not going to do that. It doesn't go over very well, right? So it's not uncommon in society that people violate Buddhist ethics. They are malicious towards other people. They try to split people, right? They have ill will, and on and on and on, right? And so they slander other people. So, to say, no, I'm not doing that, or to simply refrain from it, you can draw fire, right? You can draw criticism.
You can get fired.
Yeah, a lot of things can happen, right? Yeah, a lot of things can happen. And so, the right decision can be difficult, right? And it's hard. And that's what it means to live an ethical life. What value, it's hard, right? What value does one place upon doing the right thing, right? Is it worth telling the truth if I get fired? Well, from a Buddhist perspective, telling the truth can never lead to being fired, right? And we think that because telling the truth 10 seconds later or 1 minute later is followed by being fired, that the thing I said 30 seconds before results in being fired, right? So this is the real problem of karma and living according to the laws of karma and ethics, because according to the laws of karma and ethics, karma takes time to ripen. And the fact that 5 seconds has elapsed between event A and event B does not mean that they're connected, right? Event A created the cause for something way down the road. And event B, which is 5 seconds after event A, was caused a long time ago. Unfortunately, it's very hard to live that way, right? Yeah.
Well, you said that Buddhism would say that lying should not be the cause of you being fired. But if it's the case that being fired is actually a good thing for you, but you just don't realize it, that maybe it's actually a positive karma, maybe it's a ripening of something beneficial, because maybe you're going to get a better job or whatever.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that's very hard about all this, because don't know what's going to happen in the next moment with anything, right? So you could lose your job and it could be the best thing that ever happened to you, or it could be the beginning of 3 years of heavy suffering. You just don't know.
I think what the important point, Martin, is that there's a long arc of karma that John's touching on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank goodness. Because it's time to purify.
And so it's very hard to say, like, I'm going to tell the truth, and if I get fired 10 seconds later, that wasn't the true cause of being fired. That's an act of truth, right? That's really a very powerful karma that one collects. And, it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of strength to be able to do that. It takes a very well-educated, deeply rooted practitioner to be able to do that.
But I think the more you think about it, it makes the decision even easier to do the right thing. Because you're faced with a dilemma and you say, well, I'm going to do the right thing, because doing the right thing never causes a negative consequence.
Right.
So I'm going to tell you this now, and if you fire me because of it, guess what? You're not firing me because of it. You think you're firing me because I just told the truth.
Yeah.
But I just told the truth because it's going to benefit me later.
And that's the challenge, is to think that exact line of reasoning or something like it in the moment when you're about to wet your pants because, you know, you're going to get fired, right? Great. I mean, that's...
You weren't supposed to tell anyone about that.
I mean, that is the exact challenge, is when, you know, when one is so emotionally worked up. Because these things don't happen in some kind of neutral, you know, bland vacuum. You know, these things happen in the heat of the moment with intense emotion and, like, you know, mental sort of irrational scrambling going on, you know, because of the tension and the pressure and the, you know, the head is spinning and the emotions are supercharged, and then you go like, blah, 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 and then it's done, right? Right? And hopefully you think that line of reasoning.
Well, yeah, and plus what you're saying is really interesting, because you don't have so much attachment to your job. You feel it's better to not bring on the negative karma than to lie on the witness stand and please my, you know, chairman of the board or something.
On a quick aside, there are larger whistleblower awards now.
In case you need it, right? Just as a positive outcome. So the third thing that he mentions is what your parents taught you, right? Attachment to what your parents taught you. Like, so much of what we grow up living and believing is because of our parents. You know, 90% of what the world believes spiritually is because their parents taught them and told them that. You know, I grew up Catholic because my parents were Catholic. You know, and on and on the world over, right? And then there's like the endless education and belief system that one learns in that context, right? And there's no better cause than that for one's spiritual beliefs or behaviors. Just your parents told you, right? So, I mean, if your parents had crazy belief, you grew up with a crazy belief. I mean, it's like kids believe, you know, whatever the kids do with their parents, they mimic what their parents do. It's like my wife trash talks, you know, Donald Trump and other candidates, and so, you know, now my kids are like, yeah, Bernie Sanders, he's the best, you know. They're like growing up like Bernie fans, you know, because my wife liked Bernie, and they're freaking clueless, you know. They don't know anything, you know. I mean, but Bernie, he's the best, you know. And I mean, I remember when I was a kid, you know, growing up, my dad would always stop at the same Texaco station to get gas. You know, it was like when I was 10 or whatever. I mean, my whole upbringing was that Texaco station, you know. It's like, no, I only buy gas at Texaco. Texaco has the best gas, you know. And it's like endless stuff like that we grow up with, you know. We're not even aware of it, you know.
I'm an Exxon guy, though.
Well, there you go. And then you fight with other people, you know, like you see it the world over. It's like people grow up with a belief system, and then they violently fight with others because their parents passed this belief system on to them. You know, I was listening to a beautiful thing on NPR in the morning on the way to work, and they were saying, oh, this Syrian refugees relocated to Elizabeth, New Jersey, a dozen families, and there's so many volunteers who come out, and, you know, there's tutors, and there are more clothes donated than they would know what to do with. You know, kind of going on and on and on. It's like all choked up. It was so beautiful. And they're like, but at school it's hard because the girls wear the head, I forget what the headscarf is called. Habib. So the girls wear, but they're not allowed to. And so the girls are told at school that they have to take their habij off. And so it's fucking crazy. it's like, you know, I mean, you're not allowed to wear a scarf on your head. It's against the rules. You know, I mean, it's like, so, you know, and so 10 families pulled their kids out of public school, like, because they couldn't wear a headscarf. I mean, it's just what people grew up with, you know, crazy stuff, right? Crazy. But I mean, this is our life. These are our lives. This is how we live our lives, right? It's like countless things like this, right? So he's saying, don't do that. You know, don't have attachment to what your parents taught you, right? And we're doing, you know, so much of what we believe is because of what our parents said. Thousands of viewpoints we hold because the parents said so. So the next is teachers, right? I mean, especially, I mean, did you ever go back as an adult to your elementary school and see your teachers?
Mhm.
It's scary, right? I mean, I remember, I grew up in my house. I never thought anything of it. It was normal to me. Went to college. Came back however many years later. I'm like, this neighborhood is really small. These houses are really small. You go back to high school. It's like, you look at the teachers and wow, that trigonometry teacher, he was really crazy. I mean, he was an alcoholic. He was teaching me all this stuff. Telling me how to live my life. Right? Anyway, you go on and on and on with it. I mean, and you're they're reading the National Enquirer, and that's what they read, and they're giving you your education. It's crazy. And this is our belief system, and this is what we're attached to, and this is what we live. So this is our ethical. This is our ethical precepts. This is what we grew up with as our ethical precepts. And so he's saying, don't do that. Then there's culture. The things which our culture has ingrained into us, right? Like American culture ingrains certain value system, as does Swedish culture, etc. I mean, look at American culture now, right? I mean, just look at television or movies, right? Violence is fine. It's okay to savagely dismember people and show it to children, and have torture porn on the TV or in the movies, but you can't show a butt. It's wrong. You can't show butts or breasts or penises because there's something really wrong with that. But you can slit a person open and dismember them and disembowel them, and that's okay. What the hell is that? It's crazy, right? And you have an entire generations of society growing up with that value system and thinking that way, right? Crazy, absolutely crazy, right? Doesn't make any sense at all. So there's so many weird things like that. I mean, that's just upside down, that's bizarre for this society. So, and it goes on and on and on, buy a lot of alcohol, buy a lot of cigarettes, buy the, on and on and on, right? So, the culture says, do all these things, Culture says it's okay to have an abortion, it's not okay to have an abortion. It doesn't correspond to ethics in any way, shape, or form, right? Could change year to year, right? So then next there's, your peers, what your peers say. We learn our ethics from our peers. You grew up with a peer group. When my daughter's 12, it's all about what her best friend says. You got to do what your best friend says. You can't not do what your best friend says, And then, that's how we grow up, right? And so as we become educated Buddhists and our ethical system changes and our value system changes, it's natural that we grow apart from people who have different values, right? It's like people want to stay out all night partying, or they want to, I don't know, do whatever, which is incongruent with an ethical value system, and it's natural to not spend time doing those things. I don't want to stay out late at bars. I want to meditate, or I want to do yoga, or I want to, go on a retreat, or I want to, go to class, and no, I don't want to club hop, and so you grow apart from people that and that's difficult too. Not sharing those same viewpoints, they'll think you're strange, you're weird, you're part of a cult, or you're doing some bizarre thing, right? And it's difficult. It's difficult to, to be socially separate in many respects. And that, that doesn't mean you sort of blow off your parents or your family or something like that. You go home for the holidays. You love them. You stay in touch. You call them on the weekend. Whatever it is you normally do, right? Even if you don't share the value system. I had countless conversations with my parents which were completely pointless to me, but it was to benefit them in some way, because I'm their son and that's what you do, right? That's part of it, right? You love them and you treat them with respect and consideration, and that's it. So, all right, then next is your ethical system isn't about what's legal, right? That changes every few years, right? There's a constitutional amendment saying alcohol is evil, then there's not. Gambling is evil, gambling is legal, then it's state sponsored, it doesn't matter what's legal and what's not legal. So you can't be attached to what's right or wrong by the definition of the laws where you live. I was watching something the other day, and the guy was saying, he's like, my 13-year-old daughter ran off with a 17-year-old boy and got married, and I want to speak to the police. They're like, well, legal age is 12 here. You can't call the police, you know.
What's the with that? Yeah.
This was a long time ago. It was, you know, back in the frontier days, you know, when people had shorter life expectancies, and you know, you know, if you lived to 30, you start earlier, right? So, you know, Buddhist morality is attached to local laws in many cases. I mean, for sexual misconduct, for example, it's according to what is legal and normal in that society and you know, for that age, where sexual activity would be appropriate. You know, some societies 13 is big time no go. Some societies 13 is normal. You know, it's a social norm, right? So anyway, so you know, his point is you follow ethics and morality because of understanding karma and how karma works, not because some crazy idea your teacher taught you, or you know, something your parents just happened to pass on to you, or some law that was just put in force last year, or you know, and you know, countless litany of other things which have absolutely nothing to do with how you're forming your mind, right? I mean, ethics are all about the imprints you're placing on your mind. You know, are you doing something virtuous? Are you doing something to benefit other people and yourself, right? You know, is getting toasted beneficial to you or anyone else? Typically not. You know, is, you know, I mean, you know, I mean, is staying up all night partying, you know, typically beneficial to you or anyone else? Oh, maybe, I don't know, you know. I mean, those are silly examples, but you get the idea, right? So our goal is, as I said before, our goal is to radically modify our behavior to be pure, ethical, positive, virtuous beings, so that our minds perceive the world that way. We need to create a pure inner landscape so that we project a pure outer landscape. And if we can't create a pure inner landscape, we can't project a pure outer landscape. And therefore we won't have a good life.
Are you using pure in the sense of empty?
No, I'm in the sense of ethical, I'm in the sense of virtuous. I mean, empty simply means what? I ask you, what does empty mean?
Well, I've heard, you know, sometimes purity is a synonym for emptiness.
What does empty mean? What is the classic Dhamika Prasamika Buddhist definition of emptiness?
Not existing from its own side.
Independent of,
Causes and conditions.
depending on the school you're in. Yeah, it has no nature of its own, right? It is, when you speak of emptiness, you have to say what something is empty of, right? It's empty of existing from its own side. It's empty of having an identity of its own. It's empty of a self-nature. It's empty of a value or a name or a term or anything independent of the projection, right? So to reframe that question, when we're talking about wanting a pure mind, right? What I'm saying is we want a mind which is doing positive projection, high, pure positive projection, pure in the sense of blissful. You see? So, I mean, I would reflect it back to you and say, what kind of experience of the world do you want? Right? What do you want to see the world as? What do you want to experience the world as? That's what your inner landscape has to be, essentially, right? So, if you want a pure mind, what is that for you? What do you want to see? What do you want to experience? What do you want to project? You see? From a Buddhist perspective, we strive to achieve the Dharmakaya. Remember what that is?
The Dharmakaya is the body that manifests everywhere.
It's the mind of an enlightened being. So the mind of an enlightened being, you know, we have a mind and a body, right? As human beings, enlightened beings have a mind in multiple bodies. Emanation bodies and paradise bodies, etc. So, but the mind of an enlightened being, right, experiences everything as ultimate bliss continuously, right? While perceiving the empty nature of every object. So what does that tell you? That tells you if their inner landscape is highest ultimate bliss continuously, and everything is a blank screen to project onto, then what's their experience of everything in existence? It's pure bliss. So yeah, there's a chair, it's pure bliss. You know, there's a pen, it's pure bliss. There's G, she's pure bliss. You know, there's the toilet, it's pure bliss. You know, there's the subway, it's pure bliss. Right? So their mind can only function to experience everything as highest bliss. So when we talk about what kind of mind do we want, from a Buddhist perspective, that's the mind that we're striving, that we're working to develop. We are training ourselves to create and cultivate and bring about a mind which can only function to experience everything as highest bliss.
Mm.
And so it can have no afflictions and no defilements, right? So that's it. So then it doesn't matter what anybody says. It's bliss. It's highest bliss, right?
Doesn't matter if we like something or don't like something.
There is no not liking. Right?
I thought earlier in the teaching today, there was
Yeah.
an acknowledgement of not liking.
Yes.
So think about it, okay? I mean, it's a very good question, so think about it. Does a Buddha experience everything as total bliss all the time?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Can a Buddha not like something? What does it mean for a Buddha to not like something?
It wouldn't be total bliss.
Yeah, I mean, so you would have to say that the Buddha perceives us perceiving ourselves suffering, right? And wants us to be happy. It's a kind of compassion, or a kind of, where they describe compassion as a kind of sweet feeling, something like that. It's the general way that that's explained. So seeing you suffering and wanting you to be happy, right? It's like you're seeing yourself suffering. When I look at you, I see total bliss. So there's this element of, you're total bliss for me, but there's this little nested loop over there of someone seeing themselves suffering, right? Which I don't experience that suffering. I mean, it's like, there's like a little bubble over there, like that's suffering within itself, but I'm not suffering. I mean, I'm just making this up, but you get the idea.
Nested loop, great term. Right? Nested loop of suffering.
Yeah. We're all nested loops of suffering. I'm like, no. No. All right, where were we? Okay, so the Heart Sutra says the real goal of Buddhism is to, quote, stop the process of aging death through stopping our ignorance, right? So the Heart Sutra, the Buddha's teaching, the Heart Sutra's teaching says, you stop the process of aging and death if you can figure out this ignorance thing, right? What is this ignorance thing? If you figure it out, you can stop aging and death.
It's the unaffirmed negation of the self-existence of other things.
Yeah, seeing things as self-existent. If you stop seeing things as self-existent, you can stop aging and death, according to the Buddha in the Heart Sutra. Right? Very straightforward, right? And that's the goal of the Buddha. That's the goal of Buddhism, right? You have to try.
But didn't the Buddha die? Or
That's
so stop aging and death, is that like, that's a sort of not, that's a figurative thing?
So is it literal or figurative? Is it literal or figurative teaching, right? So it's literal. So if it's true, if what the Buddha says is true, and if what the Buddha said is literal in the Heart Sutra, right? You can stop aging and death by stopping ignorance, right? Why is it that the New York Times hasn't featured anybody on the front page who's not died, right?
Say that again?
Why hasn't the New York Times published the story?
Of someone not dying.
Right.
The Buddha.
Yeah. Or, somebody last month or this year or...
I have an answer.
Okay.
Because no reporter at the New York Times can see it.
Yeah, so it's empty, right? You can't see it. Why? It's empty. What in the world are you talking about? What does that have to do with it, right? If you have the virtue, you can see it. If you don't have the virtue, you can't see it, right? Somebody not dying is created by virtue. You're like, what the hell are you talking about? The New York Times reports on what is, right? The New York Times reports on what's there, right? It's there, it happens, the New York Times reports it, right? It's over there. It happened, they saw it, they reported it, it exists, right? That's self-existent view. That's how we live our lives, right? We think the paper tells you what's really going on and it's really out there, right? There's nothing really out there from its own side, okay? Nothing. And it's the way we view the world. There is a newspaper, it's an object here and it exists. There is an event over there, it exists over there and it exists. The newspaper sees the event, writes about it, shows it to me, and it's all there. That's our world, and therefore it's true. Not according to Buddhism. According to the Heart Sutra, that's why you age and die. You age and die because you think things are out there from their own side, really, and that there are all these discrete external objects which are bouncing around, bumping into each other, bumping into me, and I experience them when they bump into me, and that's what life is. No. From a Buddhist perspective, use quantum physics to help you think of it, right? Everything is potential, brought into being by the observer. Influx, instant to instant, right? The perceiver brings the reality into existence in that moment of perception. And in the next moment of perception, they bring another instance of reality into existence, including the New York Times and what it says. Is it possible that someone has the virtue to manifest a publication which only features people who haven't died? According to Buddhism, of course. You know, there's no self-existent New York Times. You know, is there a 60-year-old balding guy with a big smile and a silly laugh called the Dalai Lama? Yeah, that's what we see. When he looks in the mirror, what does he see? Don't know. Could be, you know, a tantric angel, an enlightened being, right? He could look down and see a glowing arm. When we're seeing, you know, a guy who's, you know, getting old and balding and chubby and, you know, all the rest, right? Don't know, right? It's not true that something doesn't exist because we didn't see it. Right? The fact that we didn't see something doesn't prove it doesn't exist. Right? How can you say that?
That's the triple negative.
How can you say that? Before they invented an electron microscope, there were lots of things we didn't see. Before they invented the next instrument, there were lots of things we didn't see. Before they invented the next scientific instrument, there were lots of things we didn't see. They didn't exist for us. Did they exist? Well, depends who you talk to. Did they exist from their own side before and we just didn't see them? Careful! Right? Yeah.
Before the evening ends, John, could you, I just want to plug this, since I don't know if it's coming down the road or if it's past, but multiple times throughout this course, there's been a conversation about emptiness and or the direct perception of emptiness and compassion.
Yeah.
And you've said it twice, and I have reviewed it, and I can't seem to connect those two quite a bit. So if you can address it later on, or
sure.
before,
Yeah, excellent timing. We're just about to get there. Perfect. So, geezing. Moving along. Yes, we have 2 minutes.
I don't want to miss it.
You know, it's the pen thing. Don't forget the pen thing, right? Geshe Michael, Holy Geshe Michael's taught for many years the pen thing. It's the pen thing, right? You know, it's the most important thing. It proves that you can become a tantric angel in this life, right? Then you have to try. Will other people see it? No. Not unless they have a pure mind, right? Right? They might even see the opposite. They might see you as a nasty person or a bad person, right? Lots of people see as holiness that way, right? So, what's the process where that happens, right? Your inner winds, your energies, and your thoughts are intimately connected. And every time you have a bad thought, they choke a little bit. Your winds choke a little bit. And that causes the process of aging and death. So every time we have an ignorant, self-existent thought, it causes our channels to be constricted a little bit and to choke our winds or our energies a little bit, right? You know, do I get do I get old overnight? No, it's a very slow, gradual process typically, right? Countless small irritations all day long, right? Year after year lead to my sickness, aging, suffering, and death. And that causes the process of aging and death. All those small irritations, all those small misunderstandings about the world. And every time we have a little bit of insight into emptiness, the channels crack open a little bit and open up a little bit, and the energies flow. And so when we have a direct perception of emptiness, the channels are wide open. It's like full throttle, wide open, right? And the energies are fully flowing in the correct way. And so when you come out of the direct perception of emptiness, then you're back to normal perceptions, self-existent view, and the channels are constricted again and choked again, right? And so the goal is to open them wide and to keep them open, because that causes a radical transformation of your physical body. And you start getting happier, and life gets better, and you feel younger, and you feel really good. And then when that process is finished, you have a completely different body. And you don't have channels which can be constricted or choked anymore. And then at that point, you don't have channels, and you're just an enlightened being. So this process of feeling loving thoughts and feeling compassionate thoughts, right? Combined with correct view opens the channels, right? And as the channels open, the energies flow in a way where the energetic basis of your being changes, right? And if you do that in a significant way and in a consistent way, then you're changing the subtle energetic basis of your being, and then the corresponding grosser levels of your being change, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's all based upon love and compassion and correct view. So every time we think the thought, right, around correct view, we're affecting the channels being open or closed, right? And every time we think a loving, compassionate thought, all of these things are contributing to cleaning the spiritual plumbing, if you will, right? I mean, you could think of it as, if we're a spiritual being with 84,000 channels, right? All of which have negative energies or obstructions or blockages or gunk in them. They all have to be cleaned. They all have to be purified. All of those negative seeds, all of those negative impulses, all of those negative energies have to be removed for the subtle energetic basis of our being to be pure. And so that subtle energetic basis of our being is the thing which we use to reach enlightenment in one lifetime. That's how you reach enlightenment in one lifetime. You transform your body and mind into an enlightened being in this life. You can't transform your body and mind into an enlightened being by going to the gym and exercising more and getting better muscles. That, this is never going to happen. You become an enlightened being in one lifetime by developing your subtle energetic body and your spiritual body so that it becomes more and more dominant, and your coarse physical body becomes less and less significant, and such that shifts, and you are the karmic causes of this body and mind, are essentially I don't want to say worn out. I mean, it's like nirvana with remainder. You remember nirvana with remainder? Mm-hmm. You have collected the karmic seeds for this body to ripen as a physical body that we're living in for this life, however long it lasts, right? And until those karmic seeds are finished, you got this body on some level, right? Now, what your experience of it is a different thing, right? What your mental experience of it and your physical experience of it is a different thing. So that's why you have nirvana with remainder and nirvana without remainder. So that's the general idea.
But that's in the Mahayana path. So you're basically saying that bodhicitta is the only means in the Mahayana path to be able to have the direct perception of emptiness, in conjunction with correct view.
Well, so in Hinayana path, they also have direct perception of emptiness.
Right, but
and they don't have the path of bodhisattva.
Right.
So I'm not sure what your question was.
So right now, what it sounds like I'm hearing is that it's the combination of bodhicitta and correct view. That combination is that cocktail is basically what needs to be in play in order to have the direct perception of emptiness.
No, that's not what I'm saying, because if that were the case, the Hinayana people couldn't perceive emptiness.
No, in the Mahayana path, or no?
So, there are different paths for seeing emptiness in different systems. And I wouldn't say it that way. And I'd rather not give you an uninformed answer, because there are like 4 or 5 tracks for seeing emptiness. Like in the Tantric track, there's a different way of seeing emptiness, for example. I think what I would say is in the Mahayana see, it's tricky because, Holy Geshe Michael has taught karma and emptiness for a long time. It comes from Lord Maitreya, and he's taught many different schools of Buddhism, and it's not always clear which hat you're wearing, right, in terms of which school you're in. But he has said very clearly that, take a step back, nothing can happen without collecting the causes, including the direct perception of emptiness, right? So, how does one collect the causes to have a direct perception of emptiness? Right? What are the causes which ripen as the perceptual event of perceiving ultimate reality, right? Because there's not some self-existent thing floating around the back of Pluto, which you float over and perceive, which is called emptiness, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a perceptual event, like every other experience of life, which is the perceptual event of experiencing ultimate reality, right? How does one have that perceptual event? How does one trigger that perception, right? How does one get to that perception, right? Well, your mind has to be very still, very calm, i.e. you have to be a very good meditator. You have to have you have to have a mind which is very still, very calm, and undefiled, right? So if your mind, you can think of it, if your mind is reflecting conventional reality, that's what you perceive, right? So how do you get your mind to project ultimate reality? Because there is no ultimate reality from its own side. Right? So how do you create a mind which is experiencing and projecting ultimate reality? Right? So the answer that Holy Geshe Michael has given is that it's a lot of virtue, a lot of high virtue, and particularly serving those in need. Old people, family, dharma, lama, and it takes heavy virtue to be able to do that. So, from my perspective, how does compassion play into that? You can't do those things without compassion, right? And if you don't have some kind of sincere feeling of caring about old people, or caring about the dharma, or caring about helping people by spreading dharma teachings, then you're not gonna, right? Not gonna make the effort. You're not gonna put the time in. Mm-hmm. You're simply not gonna put enough energy into it to bring about a result. So from my perspective, the compassion and the bodhicitta is the motivation or the basis to collect the karma that one needs to have a mind which is able to be in a state to project ultimate reality. That makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Almost there.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that was good.
She asked. Thank you, G. So, it's been 7 years. We covered all the important parts of Buddhism. It's been a beautiful, important transmission, and whether it gets passed on to other people or not is now your problem and your responsibility. You have to pass it on. so that these things will continue. There's no excuse not to. You know, it's important to do retreats, right? Important to have a good daily meditation practice. You have everything you need, and it's really up to you. You know, it's important to take a moment to be thankful and to feel happy about what we've received and where we are. You know, if you think back, I mean, Holy Ken Rinpoche, who passed this lineage to Holy Geshe Michael, he was born. What was he? He was born. It was 1954 in Tibet. 10,000 monks. He received his Larampa Geshe degree. That means he was the highest-ranking monk out of 10,000 monks that year. You know, in Tibet, he received his Geshe, his Larampa Geshe degree before I was even born, right? And so he had the great blessing of receiving teachings from him, and you know, and having Holy Geshe Michael trained by him. And he graduated from the Tantra College to become the assistant abbot even before I was born. You know, he was the assistant abbot at the Tantra College even before I was born. And there's a whole lineage of Saramay, of great lamas and monks from Saramay Monastery, who have spent years, who passed on the Dharma, you know, from ancient India to us down through this lineage. Beautiful, pure original texts, which were, you know, put on a platter and served to us. Right? Holy Geshe Michael spent 20 years studying and training, and then you know, very kindly translated everything for us and presented it to us in this beautiful, easy fashion. And so there are hundreds and hundreds of lamas that we don't even know about, you know, who are part of the lineage, who have brought the teachings to us, and you know, they don't die. You know, their mind streams continue on. You know, we're connected to them, and we have direct access to those beings, and they are around us and with us. And be aware of that. Be aware that you have that connection, right? That we receive the accurate teachings on karma and emptiness from very pure sources on bodhicitta. You know, it's all very beautiful things to be thankful for. You know, Holy Geshe Michael, I mean, I'm very appreciative and very thankful. Holy Geshe Michael spent 15 years teaching these things, spent 7 days a week translating tens of thousands of pages of text for the first time, paid for it all, you know, paid to rent space, he paid to conduct classes, he paid to work full time, you know, donate all his money, you know, paid to start the 3 Jewels, I don't know, 20 years ago or something, whatever it was, you know, over on 5th Street. You know, we still have the 3 Jewels now, thanks to their kindness. And so, you know, very beautiful. They worked for 7 days a week with no rest, and you know, made all the material arrangements, all the physical space, started this place that's been here for, I don't know, 10 or 15 years now in this location, right? So we have a lot to be thankful for. It's, you know, it's very beautiful and good to take a moment just to appreciate it, and to, you know, to really feel glad about it, that, you know, that all this has come to us, and that we've had this beautiful lineage flow through us for centuries and, you know, thousands of years. And so, yeah, be happy, right? So offer it all, you know, offer all of your efforts over these past years, all of the classes, all of the studies, all of the meditations, you know, offer it all to all the holy beings and to every suffering being, right? Perfect world, perfect universe. Saji Buddhi Jokshin Meitun Tram Rira Vinci Nide Gempadi Sangye Shingdu Mikte Lamargi Yoku Nanda Shingla Drupashuk Iram Guru Rama Gewandi Gewokun Sunam Yeshe Susum Shen Sunam Yeshe Vitum We Daga Kuni Kripashu. By the power of our efforts, by the power of our holy intentions, by the power of the truth of karma and emptiness, which can never fail, may we quickly attain enlightenment in this very lifetime and bring all suffering everywhere to an end. Well, thank you for helping me do something worthwhile
Please keep teaching.
for a while now.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll have to find something else virtuous to do with our Tuesday nights going forward.
What are you going to teach?